And staying with beef, Kerry Lonergan headed to Longreach for this week's annual general meeting of Meat and Livestock Australia. It's always one of the livelier events on the national agribusiness calendar. And given the live exports turmoil this year, the research and marketing body's critics have been queuing up to take a swing.
The Matilda Highway has taken us to Longreach, where Australia's red meat muscle has gathered to decide the immediate future of their industry. Producers, processors, big and small, are all represented here, yet for an industry known for personal and regional differences, and against a background of the live trade disaster, this is a surprisingly happy lot.
I think MLA does a very good job. They've got a pretty difficult charter to carry, and it often leaves you open to brickbats. But on the whole, I think MLA represents the industry very well.
Anyone wanting to disband MLA and start again, I think that's a bit hypocritical, but yeah, I hope nothing happens anyway.
There's no doubt about it that it's critically important that we have the best representation we can get for our industries. Whether the model at the moment is the best one, you know, I think everyone would agree it's not the perfect model, but it's the best model we have at present.
I don't think there's any tremendous groundswell of antipathy towards MLA, but I think there is a strong awareness that we can probably do things better.
There's a clear misunderstanding of the roles of both our peak councils and our service delivery company, and I think that needs to be corrected.
I'm not saying that what's happened in the past has not been good. There's been a lot of good come out of MLA, but at the same time, we've got to be prepared for change, and we are in a very changing environment.
Maybe there will be some detail rather than just concepts, because without the detail, you know, the devil is free to run.
The odd exception about MLA is the Australian Beef Association. It's on the warpath yet again. It wants MLA abolished.
We're talking about replacing it with a two-tiered structure. We have research and development put into a different organisation, and then we have a newer, leaner beef board, which would cover three basic functions. The first function would be a market reporting service, so people know how much to expect for their cattle. The third function would be to negotiate overseas trade deals, which is essential. And the third one is to implement a proper grading system into Australia to increase the consumer's confidence in Australian beef and lift consumption.
A much smaller meat research corporation, as was before with AMLC, separate body, and then we'd have that meat board doing the things that are needed. We've just continued to build a meat bureaucracy, which has been paid for by producers. They're paying more than anyone in the world for their meat bureaucracy, and they're not getting return for it.
But the chances of that happening?
I'd say virtually none, zero, zilch. That's about the best chance they've got, I think.
Could you guess a percentage?
I'd guess around somewhere between 10 and 15%.
One of the real surprises in the early stages of this AGM of MLA is the lack of animosity about the live trade fiasco of 7 months ago. We arrived here thinking it would be front and centre. Certainly it's talked about, but the blame game is all directed at the federal government, not at the MLA. Graziers just want to move on. So will there be any change at this AGM? Probably not. Will they talk about it? Certainly they will. And what will happen is a redefinition of the roles of MLA and Cattle Council. They've become somewhat blurred in recent years. But now Scott Hansen wants to exactly establish what MLA is and what its mission is. More on that redefining of roles in a moment. But worth mentioning is this year's innovation, an industry forum where heavyweights line up to answer policy questions and hopefully listen to suggestions. Consensus is this forum is a good idea, and tightened up it will become a feature at future AGMs of MLA. But the key forum would of course be the AGM itself, and our cameras and microphones were barred, but there were no surprises. The proposal to wind up MLA was beaten. In fact, it was flogged.
There were 90% against the resolution, so we got 10% for the motion.
It's a bit of a flogging, isn't it?
Look, it is a flogging, Kerry. There's no doubt about that. We knew all along that we wouldn't win, but to tell you the truth, we did hope for a higher percentage than what we got.
Will you battle on?
Look, Kerry, whether we battle on the form of putting this motion again is probably doubtful, but all is not lost. I mean, if anything came out of the meeting today, there were other sectors of the industry, even coming from Cattle Council, which were calling for a change. So it may be a case of losing the fight, but in the end of the day, winning the long-term battle.
The positive note to emerge from the AGM came from MLA's boss, Scott Hanson. He's reinforcing the message, exactly what MLA does. In other words, he's clearing up the MLA's mission statement.
Over the last couple of months, it's been really important for us to refocus the company on what we see as our core business, and to do that, we've reshaped our mission statement. It is about creating opportunities, and opportunities for cattle, sheep and goat producers by optimising the investment of their socialised levy funds into marketing and R&D.
So you're going back to the basics of being the service provider, the researcher and the marketer?
That's correct. I mean, what we are is we get given levy funds that are taken off producers, and we invest those in marketing and R&D activities that in turn create opportunities for producers to either improve their profitability or their sustainability.
Would you agree that the roles have become somewhat blurred in recent times between yourself and Cattle Council?
I think there's definitely been times when we've been seen by groups as the representatives of the industry, when we've been seen to be the representative voice for the industry. We're obviously not that. Our board structure is not one structured around representation. It's structured around a skill set that's required to provide governance and to oversee the most effective investment into R&D and marketing.
So MLA and Cattle Council appear to have redefined their roles again. That seems to be the most important signal to come from this year's AGM of MLA. The other significant event, of course, was the election of a new chair for Meat and Livestock Australia. And the new chairman of Meat and Livestock Australia is Robert Anderson. Rob, congratulations.
Thank you, Kerry.
Tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from.
Kerry, I'm from northern New South Wales, between Gunnedah and Coonabarabran, near a little town called Malali.
Grazier?
Grazier all my life, yes.
And how many cattle?
Oh, enough to keep us busy, Kerry, yeah.
Good. Now, new chairs always want to have a run the broom through, or in or out. Any particular things that you want to do?
Not at this stage, Kerry. Having just been elected, I'm a bit of an inclusive type chairman, so the board will no doubt direct me as to where they want me to go.
But what do you see as perhaps challenges ahead then?
I think probably our biggest challenge is getting the community to understand our roles, and that is marketing and research and development. We're a service delivery company, and I think that's perhaps become a bit confused over the years.
No doubt we'll see more of you on Landline in the future, but for now, congratulations.
Thanks, Kerry.
I'm betting Rob Anderson is hoping for a quieter first 12 months than his predecessor Don Heatley had in his final year. Now, time has caught up with us. It's certainly on the wing, but I do have a few brief moments to talk about some commodity prices, and perhaps it's just as well, because commodity prices just about everywhere have been totally appalling this past week, except for cattle. So I'll start with the good news. Most of the indicators headed north as restockers, lot feeders and processors competed in a market where numbers were substantially up on those available last week. The falling dollar will no doubt help exporters. The Eastern Young Cattle indicator was steady at a touch above $4. And that's the end of just about anything positive. Local wheat futures retreated on the back of a certain bumper crop in Australia. Weather has been excellent for harvest in most areas, and yields are way up. I've heard of 20 bags in country where 8 or 10 is regarded as pleasing. Spot prices are also backpedalling. Reports continue of big feed wheat sales, including 150,000 tonnes of Australian feed wheat to Thailand. And overseas, it was not much better. Concern over sovereign debt in Europe in particular has ricocheted into the agribusiness world, and many commodities traded limit down. So Chicago is reeling. Time will tell if hedge funds are partially to blame for this collapse with their computer-generated selling. But it has to be said the fundamentals are not good. As mentioned, those problems in Europe are spooking all markets. Finally, wool. Not good, but it could have been worse. The fall in our dollar will help somewhat. The Eastern Market Indicator closed at 1,190 cents. That's down 2.4% for the week, but nearly 16% up on this week last year. Finally, a quick look at the Southern Oscillation Index. That's the key indicator for future rainfall possibilities. Here's the graph, and as you can see, it's retreated from last week, now at plus 8.8, but well below the level of this time last year. That's it from the commodities desk for this week and indeed for this year. Thank you, landliners, for all the brickbats and even the occasional bouquet. From the banks of the Thompson River here at Longreach, got to wish you and yours a Merry Christmas and a very happy and healthy New Year.